Writing Recipe Stories Workshop. Why should I share my family recipes? People connect through food. Just as we become closer to family by sharing food and experiences, we can connect with other people too. Sharing your family recipes is a way to share your experiences and emotions in a fun and delicious way. Sharing the foods of our cultures helps to educate others about our meaningful ingredients, holidays, and traditions. Writing can be difficult, so we are going to break this down into easy-to-follow steps. I'm going to do these steps with you. If I'm going too slowly, feel free to move ahead. That means if you want to start writing on your own, go ahead. Step 1. Let's make a list of recipes that are important in your family. What dishes are always on your holiday table? What was your grandmother's trademark dish that you cannot taste without thinking of her in the kitchen? What recipe does your family crave the most after a long day? For now, write down the names of the dishes that make you think of family or your heritage or of special times in your life. We will write down the actual recipes later. Here's an example. This is just a list of names, no recipes yet. The list is not in any order except for how they popped into my head. As you can tell, I love food. I thought of a lot of dishes that are special to me. Step 2. Now that you have a list of important recipes in front of you, let's think about why these recipes are important. Give yourself some space to write down notes next to each recipe. Ask yourself questions about each recipe on the list. For example, who is known for making that dish? Do you eat it at a certain time of year or during a particular event? What do you feel when you eat it? Does it make you remember other important events? If a recipe is hard for you to write about, leave a blank spot and move on to the next one. Because remember, we're not writing about all of the recipes, just the one that's the easiest and most interesting for you to write about. Here's my example. This is the same as the list that I had before, but I've just written a tiny bit more about each one to see if there's a story that I feel is worth telling or that might be interesting to other people. There's Greek meatballs. It's our weekly favorite with buttered noodles and mizithra, which is a kind of cheese, and greens. But looking at it, I don't really have any stories about meatballs. We just like eating them and not sharing them. There's avgolemano, which is a kind of soup. It makes me think of being sick at my grandmother's house. Does every culture cook chicken and rice as sick food? There are lots of stories about this, but they all involve me being sick at my grandma's house, so I'm not sure I want to write a story about this. Baklava. Actually, we usually just bought this. As an adult, I've learned how to make it. My main memory is not wanting to share it. I just realized that's two foods I don't want to share. Curambiedas and kulurakia, Christmas and Easter cookies. It is not a holiday without these cookies. The shapes are important too. If they aren't in the right shapes, they don't seem to taste right, which doesn't make sense. I've made these cookies so many times. I have lots of stories I could tell, and I have strong feelings about thinking about them. So I'm pretty sure I would go with Christmas or Easter cookies. But the last one is tsureki. I make this every Easter. It is an egg bread with red Easter eggs baked into it. It also has aniseed in it, so not everyone likes it. I could write about this. I think I might write about kulurakia, though, the Easter cookies. When you look at your list, if you're not sure yet what to write about, just start writing your story and then see if you feel like it's interesting to read. So yes, I chose kulurakia. These aren't mine. They're from the internet, but mine look just like this. There are lots of shapes to make it in, and this is the shape I make it in. So before you write the recipe down, write the story first. Explain why you chose this recipe. Is there a story you could tell about one of the times you made it? Keep in mind that your readers might not be familiar with your culture or some of the ingredients. What will you need to explain? After you have written out your story and you feel like it is something that you want to share with other people, now it's time for the recipe. So when you're writing down your recipe, first assume that your reader has some basic cooking knowledge. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. If it's cookies like mine, assume that they've made cookies before, just not your cookies. Tell your reader when an ingredient can be substituted and with what. If it's an ingredient that might be unfamiliar, perhaps even tell them where to buy it locally. I think this particular recipe, I think most people know where to get aniseed, but let's say somebody didn't know where to buy it. I would tell them to go to one of the Armenian delis or Mediterranean delis where I know that they would have aniseed. Sometimes they have it at regular grocery stores, but sometimes they don't. Also, for this recipe, you would need a fairly large amount of sesame seeds because you don't want to be stingy with them. So I would tell people again to get a package of them from one of the Mediterranean or Armenian delis because they're the most likely to have a large enough packet or jar of sesame seeds. Also, warn your reader when an ingredient can absolutely not be substituted. For example, I wouldn't substitute aniseed with anything else. Just leave it out if you can't find it, that kind of thing. And then try to be as specific as possible with measurements. I know it's hard. I don't measure precisely when I'm cooking either, but try to be specific. Maybe if you're unsure, you can try making the recipe before you write it down so that you can tell yourself, oh, it's a hand-sized amount of this, or it's a teacup of this. Even that can be helpful. And that's it.